Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy is sponsored by Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with the intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Products include Westlaw, Practical Law, and Firm Central legal practice management software for small law firms. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the Greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is Life Illuminated. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan, acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. A Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology. Look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Welcome. Access to Democracy returns. This is actually our first show in 2017, and we have a return guest. And it's been too long since she was last here. Mayor Elizabeth Kautz of Burnsville, our sister city. For a long time, we were partners in the television business. We each went our separate ways 7 years ago, but it's really a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you for inviting me to be back and to have this conversation with you, Alan.
And so much has happened in terms of when we first met,
Yes.
which is about 18 years ago also. But I guess the one thing that really strikes me in particular is 8 terms as mayor
Yes.
and 22 years. This last term, this last election, you didn't even have an opponent.
Well, you know, I am just honored and privileged that the people of my community continue to believe that I am doing a good job. I always say that elections are my report card and also my evaluation. And so I am
Obviously,
honored to
there's
continue.
an A there someplace.
Yeah, so I am just, I feel humbled and honored that I will continue to serve the city that I love so very much.
Well, we should mention that you were also president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors,
Yes.
which from a small city like Burnsville is another great accolade to you and to your prowess and your activity. And I won't hold it against you, but you recently met President-elect Trump.
Yes, I did. And I, again, very honored to have the confidence of my colleagues from across the country, and was elected to serve as president of the United States Conference of Mayors from 2009 to 2011. And I had an extended term because the mayor of Seattle did not gain re-election. So I finished that term and then my term. And I came into office at the same time that President Obama came into office. So have worked with President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, and now soon to be inaugurated President Trump.
A week from today, as a matter of fact, as
Yes.
we make this one on Friday the 13th, but we're not superstitious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about Burnsville and the changing face of Burnsville since you have become mayor. There is so much
Yeah.
that has gone down. There's so much that's happened. Let's start with heart of the city. Tell everybody what that is, and I mean that's your legacy. If nothing else is, and we'll get
Well,
to
I
the
hope
Ames
it's
Center.
more than that as we continue to talk. But when I came into office, one of the things that I wanted us to do in Burnsville and kept talking about it, isn't anyone doing anything to revision the city, because it was looking tired and depressed, and there were areas that were blighted. And some of my colleagues at the time, I was on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce, and got tired of hearing me say, isn't somebody doing something? They said, if you don't like it, do something about it. So I did, and here I am. And we convened the community. Over 2,000 people took part in Partnerships for Tomorrow. The heart of the city was an economic development theme, which is part of our success factors if we're going to really accomplish the broad and bold vision that we put into place. This 54-acre site was becoming quite depressed and blighted. And so all of these people came together and also thought the same thing. And it is a redevelopment district. It is an urban center, mixed-use development with a diversified ingredient that creates that heart of the city.
And you have restaurants, some very nice restaurants.
A central park.
You have a central park. You have housing. On the fringe. You have food establishments.
Yes.
I mean, grocery stores.
Yeah,
and
banks.
and
it's really,
banks.
and then the crown jewel that really brings together that wonderful development is the Ames Center, which is our performing arts center. And it opened also in the worst recession,
I was just gonna say,
our country ever experienced.
Worst times, and there was a lot of criticism at the time of spending all that money for the Ames Center, but the whole country was suffering at that time. Yeah. And let's talk about the turnabout in the Ames Center today.
Let's talk about, in government, things just don't happen overnight. The Ames Center was part of the redevelopment and vision for that area. So their plans were designed in 2000, and that's when we went out to get grant money from the Livable Communities Act and got $4 million in grant money to buy the property that the Ames Center sits on now and the Nicollet Commons Park. So when people think that it all happened and why were you spending all of that money at that time? Money had already been spent. Money had been brought into the coffers as revenue to support all of that. But when it hit the recession, the train was already moving.
Yeah.
And so that's where it is. Now that
so
the economy...
It was a struggle in the beginning. No question, it was a money loser in the beginning.
Well, like every other business in the country and there were businesses that were failing, businesses that were closing, there were bankruptcies. But we had put in place a very strong financial plan with different mechanisms to address the bonds that were sold for that. So the thing is, right now, as the economy does well, so is the Ames Center doing very well.
And
but
you're booking some really big national acts there.
Yes, we had Michael Bolton there. We have, just recently, Anderson was there for New Year's and just loves it. Louis Anderson. And he comes back from Las Vegas to do, and I think this is the fourth year that he's been here, but he comes
back to his hometown.
He loves the Ames Center, and he comes back and does 2 performances on New Year's Eve.
And of course, we have some theater that's going on there.
Yes, But I also want to talk about that during my time, the 42 corridor from the railroad tracks to the border of Savage. When I came into office, what we had was Rosemount Industry, we had Northern Hydraulics, and the Ames Business Center. And then back around Irving, there were some businesses there. And these were 2 TIF districts, 1 and 2. Data sales had just been built.
TIF meaning
Tax increment
financing.
Yes. And when you look at it now, that whole area on the south side of 42 and the north side of 42, all of that came in under my watch. And it has created so much economic vitality and jobs that really helps Burnsville to be at the center south of the river with economic vitality.
And of course, you still have the Burnsville Center,
Absolutely.
which is one of the biggest shopping malls.
South of the river.
Right.
Yes. And now Eagan is doing such a wonderful job with all of the retail that it's putting in place in the old Lockheed site, and then down at the old, where is now called
Cedarvale.
Cedar Crossing, I think it is. It used to be Cedarvale. Now, come on.
I'm from the old days.
Yes. Yes. So, so it's wonderful when you look at both Eagan and Burnsville and Apple Valley. Lakeville is coming on too. But, you know, we work together and we do a very good job of helping one another and really understanding how we need to collaborate and partner.
Well, Mike McGuire has been a terrific mayor also. And of course, we had several interim mayors before him. Pat Anderson, who's a frequent guest here, who was a terrific mayor. Tom Egan.
Yes, he was in office when I came into office.
The chief, whose name escapes me at the moment, but the former police chief, who was mayor for a short period of time.
Oh, yes, Gagan.
Gagan,
yes.
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 And
I'm from Burnsville. You live in Eagan, and I remember.
I've got you in years, though. So it has been amazing watching both cities, as you just pointed out.
Yes.
And where do we go from here?
You know, the economy's doing well. The one big challenge for us is that we're built out. Unlike Eagan and Lakeville, Apple Valley, and Savage, they're still growing. We're 27 square miles built out. So we're in redevelopment. And it's harder because you have to raise buildings if you're going to build anew. So for us in Burnsville, these are our challenges, but we also have some great opportunities because we're on a transportation corridor where the interstate divides to go to St. Paul and to Minneapolis. We have the river and we have rail close to the airport. So here are some strengths for us. And so as the economy gets better, we have some areas that we need to look at and have been with our property owners in the Minnesota River Quadrant. So there's opportunities there for...
Is that the Black Dog area?
Well, it's west of the freeway to the border of Savage from 13 to the river. It's 1,700 acres. But the thing is, we still have a quarry that's still active and a landfill that's still active. And so we have to work with all of them. But there's still activity that can be done south of those two highly active, high industrial uses.
I noticed with all the commercial property that has gone in and the stores and everything else, you have also built living quarters, whether they be condos, whether they be individual homes, or whether they be apartments. So a lot of these people can live and work right in Burnsville, which is a big incentive for people.
Yes, it is. And one of the things I like to say to people is that you can have your choice of environment that you want to live in. You can live in a suburban setting with your 10,000 square foot lot, or you can live in our rural area in southwest Burnsville where you can own a lot for an acre or 12 or however many you need down in that area. Or you can live in an urban setting like the heart of the city, or on the lake. We have lakes. So there's all of these settings. And
that's one thing we do have a lot of in Minnesota is lakes. Yes.
And as we continue to redevelop the Minnesota River Quadrant and that riverfront, you know, the river is a great asset. And Burnsville is a river town, but not too many people know that we are because they don't access it. There's no way to access. There aren't any amenities. We do have a bike trail that connects into Eagan now. And I think as we continue to improve all of those areas, that wonderful natural asset that we have is going to be a jewel.
I think one of the things that really has been important in terms of the administration in Burnsville and in Eagan in terms of mayors and city council is that they have been above politics.
Yes.
We don't have
Yeah.
party labels
That's
on
right.
people.
That's right.
We have labels on them as city councilman or woman or mayor or whatever without a party label. And I think that in both cities has been very important
Yes.
in terms of the progress that we've seen.
You know, you're absolutely correct, Alan. I think for us, we look at what's good for our city. And then we chart a course to do what we need to do. And we agree on it. Sometimes we agree on the vision. Sometimes we may disagree on the path to achieving the vision. But at the end of the day, we agree on how we're going to get there. And that has helped our cities continue to thrive economically, and it's a great place to raise children. We work well with the school districts because it's an important asset for all of us.
And we have some of the best school districts
my
in the
gosh.
state.
Yes.
Right here, 191, 196, yes.
Yes. And so these are the things that people don't understand, that we collaborate with our school board members. We work together, at least we do in Burnsville, and I believe that the same thing is true of Mayor McGuire and 196 board.
Absolutely.
The same thing with Mayor Heyman Rowland and the school board of 196. But for us, we look at our community rather than saying, oh, there's a school board and we work together. They have authority and a domain over the education of our children. We have domain and authority about the city, its land use, its zoning, its economic vitality, its safety, and so forth. Its roads, its infrastructure. People get water. When they flush their toilets, they know that it's going to be dispatched.
And it's not going to be Flint, Michigan either.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
Now, one of the things, as we spoke briefly before we started this interview, was tax-exempt bonds
Yes.
and taxation. Talk to that and how...
You know, one of the things that is very important and people need to understand is tax-exempt bonds build our infrastructure. And it's important because then people are not being taxed twice. We need to build the infrastructure. They pay property tax. We don't need to pay taxes on the bonds that we use to build our infrastructure, above the ground and below the ground. And so for the last 4 years, we have been pushing in Washington because both the executive branch and the congressional branch, both houses, were looking at taking away our tax-exempt bonds. Well, that is not good. So when we met with President-elect Trump, we did talk about our tax-exempt bonds, and he listened and he understood, and he says, I'm with you. So very quickly we sent out a letter to the Speaker of the House, Mr. Ryan, and the chairman of Ways and Means, and reported on our meeting with our president-elect. So we're going to continue to work
this meeting
through all of that.
with President-elect Trump, I might say, was part of a delegation from the U.S.Conference of Mayors,
Absolutely.
of which you
Yes.
are one of, I think, a half dozen. So
There were 4 of us. I am privileged to be on that team because I'm in leadership, because I'm a past president. But I was the only woman, the only suburb, small city in that delegation, which is usually on the U.S. Conference of Mayors. It's mayors of big city who elevate to that position. And my colleagues had the confidence in me to elect me to be president, and I am. So when we were there, it was the mayor of Oklahoma City. He is our sitting president, Mick Cornett. Vice president is Mayor Mitch Landrieu from New Orleans, and then the second VP is Mayor Benjamin Stephen Benjamin from Columbia, South Carolina. All three big cities, and then Burnsville. And small city, 61,000, and a suburb. So, and it's good to be there and to have the voice of small cities in that big arena.
Now, another thing that we should talk about, a city the size of Burnsville, which has now grown to 61,000, as you say, you've had changing policing requirements, and you've had to actually enlarge the police department somewhat. But you are pretty unique in Burnsville in one respect, and that's body cameras for your police. Now, talk about how that came about and what you see as a result of it.
Thank you, Alan, for that question. Let me tell you, it didn't come from us. It came from the rank and file that said, here's new technology. This was 6 years ago. So Burnsville was an early adapter. It was, I think, the second city in the state of Minnesota and third in the country that implemented body cameras for our police officers. And it came from our police officers. And what that has resulted in, and they're the ones who said, this is good for transparency and accountability. And you know what? It has. And our officers were not afraid of being accountable and to be transparent. It has helped us in court. It has helped us to resolve any conflicts or anecdotal information. You know, you can sit down and view the video, and then you can determine it's right
It's
there.
also helped keep costs down.
Absolutely.
In that, you know, there's no question, if you see it on tape, so to speak, that's the fact of the matter is. And different-wise, in terms of ultimate stories that you hear,
right.
You know, the old the trick of put 10 people in a row, tell something to the first person, and by the time
you get
the
to
10th gives it, it's an entirely different story.
Here's the thing that's unique. So because all of us have these smartphones and you have cameras and all of that, the body cams that the officers wear also has audio. So you know live when things are happening, what you're seeing, and you're hearing the audio. You're hearing what the officers are saying. You hear the interaction that's going on. It's not someone taking a picture from across the street or somewhere else, and you don't have the audio to determine what really is happening. And our officers, their cameras are activated when they're on the roll and they get the 911 call.
And it's better for the officer,
it's
better for whoever they're dealing with,
Yes.
and it's better for the community.
Absolutely.
And that's a big thing.
Yes.
Yes. How big is the force now?
75. But you know, when we were growing, and we're on a transportation corridor, so when you look at the stats that we receive, a lot of the incidents are from people outside of Burnsville. Not necessarily. We do have incidents that are, but they're
we're
either
getting that here
domestics.
with the outlet mall. It certainly has changed policing in Egan to a
Absolutely.
large degree.
When you have a lot of visitors, you have to be very aware of those changing in factors that has an impact on your environment.
So,
Yes.
so that's another plus in the Burnsville column.
You know, it is, and I'm so proud of both our police and fire. They work so well together, Alan, that they train together. And so when they address an incident, they are helping one another. And our fire paramedics go hand in hand with our police. Before, they had to wait until the incident or the has been cleared before they can come in. But they can go in together. Fire paramedic knows that the police will secure the environment, have their backs while they're attending to the victims.
What about infrastructure needs? I mean, we have crumbling infrastructure all over the state. Now, obviously, state roads and things like that are the state's responsibility. But how are you doing in terms of infrastructure locally?
Oh, very well. Let me tell you, when I came into office, I knew that our infrastructure was like 30 and 35 years old, and it needed to be reconstructed, rehabilitated, and so forth, above the ground and below the ground. We have a lot more mileage.
I feel the same way myself, by the way.
And so what we did was we put in place an infrastructure trust fund. And we didn't touch it for 5 years. Alan, now we can reconstruct our roads, and we do so many, anywhere from 3 to 6 miles a year, above and below the ground. And it is pay-go. And so the portion that the city is responsible for, we don't have to bond for that. We do bond for the assessment that for the individual affected property owner. But otherwise, we've kept everything very low when you look at how much our residents and businesses pay in terms of their assessed value fee for infrastructure. It's so much lower than anybody else. It's because our infrastructure trust fund.
And Burnsville is also the home of the headquarters of our sponsor and very good friend, now Firefly Credit Union, but they're so Firefly. Involved. They're so involved civically.
Yes.
Very charitable organization, and again made up of its members.
Yes.
But and of course my close friend Bill Raker, who was just here on an interview, a guest interview, by the way.
And Mr. Raker is the CEO of Firefly. From the very beginning has been a great corporate citizen, involved in the community, engaged in the community, he and his staff, that these are the kind of corporate citizens. Of course, he's a big sponsor of Access to Democracy, and so you can see that he continues to give back to the community in many ways.
He's involved in so many different activities and organizations and charities that it boggles the mind, and respected throughout the country. You can see boards, and in fact he just got a national award from one of the credit union
and
organizations.
Both of us are very proud that we're called his friend.
Yes, indeed. And we've been talking with Mayor Elizabeth Kautz of Burnsville. Long-time guest, but hasn't been here recently, but certainly looking forward to continuing this in a bit. And you're always welcome here. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for the conversation.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me. It's been a wonderful honor.
On to year 25.
Yes.